What's going on, everybody? It's ShamefulPenguin here, back with another video. Today I'm going to be going over my league start for 3.15 Expedition, which was my Storm Rain / Lightning Arrow Raider. This build is actually pretty strong. The league is actually pretty tough because of all the nerfs, so you do feel it, but actually I'm really enjoying this build. Being really zoomy as a Raider is really fun. There's a lot of different questions I've been getting about this build, and I hope to answer all those questions in this video here. I'm going to pretty much be going over a list of questions I've been asked numerous times, and this is like a semi-complete, it's not really a complete guide. I'm going to be making a full endgame guide for this build later on, but as a league starter, this is my findings and what I recommend you guys doing if you're looking into making this build, or if you're looking into swapping to a build, or if you're already using this build and you don't know what your upgrade path should be. I hope this video is what's going to help you out. So let's get into just talking about how Storm Rain works. Storm Rain, you shoot arrows in the sky and then they arc to each of the individual arrows that land. So you can think of this skill as like Toxic Rain, how it lands, projectiles land, and then they pulse with damage, except for this one tethers with arcing beams. The arcing beams are what are insane. They pulse 4 times, and if you can get them to overlap multiple times, I've had bosses that have overlapped like 20 plus arcing beams at the same time and they just melt. So Storm Rain is actually going to be our single target DPS in this build. As a mapper, if you only want to use Storm Rain, you're going to be pretty slow. Storm Rain's not that fast in my opinion, at least the way I'm playing it. There may be more ways to play it, but as a self-cast Storm Rain, it is pretty slow, so I opt to use Lightning Arrow to clear the map and then use Storm Rain just on bosses. Now I've opted for a slightly different setup than the generic cast both of them, self-casting both of them. I've actually opted to use Ballistic Totems to cast the Storm Rains, because you can just cast a bunch of them at once. You just place these boys down and it will completely wreck the boss, and I can just run around shooting lightning arrow at the boss at the same time just to maximize my DPS. And I think this is the strongest way to play this build as a league start, when you're not like fully endgame gear expensive stuff. I think that's your best option at single target DPS and mapping, and I highly recommend you guys try this setup. The other setup you can go is actually using Mirage Archer with other than Ballistic Totem. That way when you use Mirage Archer and you shoot the arrows from the ground, you have the Mirage Archer constantly shooting them. So you can think of this build like Toxic Rain. Most of the setup is kind of similar. So let's get into the gems. Actually, I made a POB for this. This is the same POB if you guys looked at my previous one. Pretty much nothing's changed on the tree. I've really liked what I've picked. Remember, there's different trees for your leveling convenience with cluster jewels, with the Lioneye's fall jewel, which is actually what I'm playing with right now on my current build. And yeah, we're going to go over the skill gems just so you guys know. So Storm Rain, I'm using with Ballistic Totem, but if you feel like it, if you don't want to use totems for whatever reason, use Mirage Archer right here instead. Perfectly viable. I think you're losing DPS and losing like the fluidity of the game, but if you for whatever reason don't want totems, you can take that off if you feel like it. But yeah, we're using Ballistic Totem, GMP, and Storm Rain. GMP is necessary because if you look at this, you only cast 1 arrow at a time, so the more projectiles we can cast, the better. So right now we're casting 5 with GMP. You can get +2 projectiles from things like Death's Opus, just a generic bow with +2 arrows, or a quiver with +1 arrow. All that kind of stuff will make your DPS on Storm Rain a lot better. So I highly recommend you guys check that out. I will be going over the bows and different setups you can have with the bows and this chest piece. So don't worry, I will mention that later in the video when we go over the gear. So as for your setup, Storm Rain, GMP, and Ballistic Totem are the most 3 important. They're all utility, so it's unfortunate if you have a 3 link, you're not really getting much damage out of it yet, but it does a lot of damage by itself, so it's not too bad. Once you get your 4th link, I recommend lightning damage, because this just adds a lot of flat damage. I highly recommend it. Inspiration and elemental damage with attacks are your 5th and 6th link. I would recommend, actually, you know what? I don't know why this didn't save. This actually is supposed to be increased critical damage support. You don't actually need it to have inspiration because you're not casting it, so you don't need the minus mana on top of the damage, which is pretty nice. Increased crit will actually be just as good. We don't care about the mana multiplier if you're using totems, but if you're using a Mirage Archer and you're running into mana issues, just slap in inspiration and it should fix your problem. As our main clearing skill, we're going to be using Lightning Arrow. Lightning Arrow is very strong. It's been buffed. So Lightning Arrow, we're using greater multiple projectiles to cast those extra projectiles. It's really, really smooth. I highly recommend it. Elemental damage with attacks, added lightning, inspiration, and pierce are all your setup. Pierce is going to be, I say, mandatory to make the mapping feel smooth. You can try it without, but it really doesn't kill that much. You could also opt to use chain support, but unless you have a huge amount of damage, unless you're just like automatically one-shotting everything in the pack, no problem, which may be a potential endgame change once we're OP. But for now, pierce is our support because it adds damage and it gives us just good clearing, while chain kills our damage, but it gives us good clearing. So I highly recommend pierce as your third link after GMP or LMP. Add a lightning damage, inspiration, and then elemental damage with attacks. The last three, the added damage, elemental damage with attacks, and inspiration, can kind of be changed based on how you feel. If you feel like you're always running out of mana and you need help with mana, inspiration just reduces your your mana usage, so it really helps. I'll go over this in a bit, but once you have a Lioneye's vision, your links will change a little bit. So now we have our Arcanist brand. This is going to cast our Sniper's Mark and our Hydrosphere. I did have Wave of Conviction here earlier because it does give us a lot of exposure, but Hydrosphere with Sniper's Mark is actually a really good setup because Hydrosphere can ricochet your hits. So if you're using chain, it's really good. If you're using Deadeye, pretty much always use Hydrosphere. It adds damage to you. But if you're using Sniper's Mark and you don't have chain, the Sniper's Mark will have it ricochet for you, so it's pretty strong. I've been enjoying Hydrosphere. You could go with Wave of Conviction instead, but Hydrosphere has been pretty good. Both of them add exposure, but Wave of Conviction adds more exposure. But if you are running chain, you're 100% running Hydrosphere instead. And it does do damage. It does pulse with damage, so having this leveled up can help you. And yeah. So next, we're running our Auras, Wrath, Herald of Thunder in a level 1 precision. You can level this up as much as you are comfortable, but just remember, every time you level it up, your mana goes down. So you got to keep it with whatever's comfortable. Yeah. And we got our movement skills. I'm using Blink Arrow and Dash on Second Wind. Yeah, Second Wind makes it pretty bad, so make sure you have Second Wind at a high level. But the cool thing interaction with this is that when I use Dash, it doesn't consume a Blink Arrow charge. So these are on separate cooldowns. So I get a bunch of different dashes now. Whereas if you were to use Flame Dash, Smoke Mine, and Dash, they're all on the same global cooldown. So you would have consume all your charges from that. But for now, they're on different charges, so I can just zoom around the map with both of these. Movement skills are kind of optional, so use whatever you want. Counts when damage taken, Steel Skin, kind of self-explanatory, helps us not take damage. And lastly, I'm using a Golem. I'm personally using Ice Golem currently, but once you are, because it matters for your hit chance. So I'm at 94 and 89 on evasive monsters, so when I cast this, I get a bit more. I'm working on getting this capped. There's a lot of places you could add accuracy when we go over gear. So use Lightning or Ice Golem if you need extra accuracy. But once you don't need any more accuracy, once you're capped without it, Lightning Golem is the superior Golem. You could also use, if you don't want to use a Golem setup because they die too often or whatever, you can just suck it in Blood Rage in here instead. If you want to use Blood Rage, this is a really strong skill. It does consume a lot of your life per second, so you will die. but it gives you a ton of attack speed, it gives you leech, and it gives you frenzy charges. So this is actually the best option, and I'll leave this here in the links for you guys. But Blood Rage, in my opinion, I've died to it too many times. I felt like when I stop attacking enemies and mobs are too far apart, I just drain my life and die. So I opt to not use it until maybe late game when I can sustain a lot better, but Blood Rage does add a ton of DPS to our build. So if you're looking for numbers, Blood Rage is where you got it. So we're going to go over our items now. So my items are pretty cruddy on this. So I'm going to just kind of be talking about what you should get on each piece of gear. So as for the boots, the helmet, and the gloves, you're just going to want, well, you're going to want movement speed on your boots, obviously. But you're going to want to have life on all of these pieces. Resistance, whatever resistance you need, you got to make sure you're capped up on your resistance. And you're going to want strength and int when you can get it. Because Wrath, if you look on the POB again, Wrath will cost you a lot of, at level 20, 155 int, which is pretty big. Same with Herald of Thunder. And also, you want strength if you're going with the Lioneye's vision, because it's 160 strength required. So that's a big requirement on an off stat. So you're gonna have to get your pieces of gear. So your rings and your amulet, you're gonna want to get int and strength where you can, but of course you're gonna want to have life and resistance where you can. Other good modifiers on your jewelry are non-channeling skills have minus the mana cost. This will help you a lot. Plus to lightning damage attacks, cold damage attacks, fizz, and fire also do help your DPS because we just do more damage. It's fine, but lightning damage to attacks is your best because we're scaling it. And also, lastly, you're also going to want to have attack speed. Attack speed you can get on all of your jewelry pieces. And elemental damage with attacks as well is just it's just more damage. So if you can get any of those, you're doing really well. I will make I'll probably make a build guide online. So if you're confused on like what the priority of the gearing is, I'm gonna make a forum guide in the next 2 days. But yeah, basically the strength and the int requirement is something you're gonna have to meet with this build. So the way around it is just try to get it on all your pieces of gear, same as with your belt, resistance, life. Try to get your strength and int if you can, and then also damage, so you can get elemental damage with attacks on your belt. You can actually get a pretty high roll, so I highly recommend looking for that. So now we're gonna go for a quiver. So this quiver is probably gonna change at end game, so we're just using a rare quiver for now. The base, you could use a broadhead quiver, you could use the pierce quiver, or you could use the crit quiver. They're all pretty similar in damage, but basically what you want are the rolls on it are the important thing. You can get a lot of damage from your quiver, but you could also get a lot of defense. So it depends what you need for your build. If you're like not good on res at all in your build, then you're probably going to need to have a little bit of resistance and some life on your build. But if you are good on resistance and life, you can get attack speed, accuracy, elemental damage with attacks, flat added lightning damage. You can get a ton of things for your build that will help you a lot. So just look for a quiver with a balance of stats, and try not to get resistance on it, but if you need resistance on your quiver, then this is the place that you get it. Your bow, on your other hand, will be just pure damage. You don't want to look at resistance. I'm using a Tempest currently. This gives insane attack speed. If you can get this with some links on it, I highly recommend using it, as this is attack speed scales Storm Rain, I almost said Storm Rain really well. So the more attack speed, the more damage with Storm Rain. Like for single target, it's going to be really good. I'll show you my other bow I was working with. Where'd I put it? Right here. So if you want to use a rare bow, which is actually better than Tempest and Death's Opus, I'll go over Death's Opus later on. If you can get a really good rare bow, it'll beat both of them no problem. So you want the main stat you want on a bow is adds blank to blank lightning damage. If you can get this as high as possible, mine's a tier 3. If you can get tier 2 or even tier 1, you're looking really good on damage. You're gonna need attack speed on your bow because it scales the attacks per second based on your bow. So attack speed is really required to get on a bow. The next two most important stats are crit multi and elemental damage with attacks, and crit chance as well. Those are also really good. And then lastly, I would say physical damage is really good because we actually convert 50% of our fizz to lightning damage on our lightning arrow and our storm rain. So physical damage does help us out. And yeah, so if I missed anything, just take a look at the forum guide that I'm going to put out in a couple days. So yeah, Tempest, really strong bow to go for. You can even go for a storm cloud early on. And lastly, do I have another one? I was selling one earlier. Nope, I think I sold it. So we're gonna look at a Death's Opus really quick. I'll bring up the wiki for this. So Death's Opus gives a decent amount of fizz. You get a decent amount of fizz DPS. It's not like crazy. Rare bows can beat this out like really well. The main stat we look at is bow attacks fire 2 additional arrows. Now this is really good because this can give you options to run with lightning arrow, and it makes your storm rain a lot better. So now other than firing 5 projectiles, you're firing 7, so this is really strong. It has crit multi, attack speed and stuff. It's pretty decent, but it's kind of a slow bow. So you will notice being a little bit slower in attacks, but you will do a decent amount of damage. It has no flat added lightning damage, so you are losing DPS in that. But firing 2 additional arrows is actually really good, because then it'll cause our lightning arrow. We can actually, on our lightning arrow, we can take out GMP and we'll actually end up firing 3 arrows, so it's like an LMP. So then you can, other than having a greater multiple projectile, you can have something like Mirage Archer or just more damage on your bow. So this opens up options for your links on both on just your lightning arrow. So let's say we have Death's Opus on our lightning arrow right now. You would take off GMP. You would have to have on Pierce, of course, and then you would probably put on increased strikes, lightning pen, yeah, something like that. I would put on probably increased crits as your 5th or 6th link, whatever you're working on, but you would still need to have Pierce or Chain on, unless you are using a Lioneye's Vision. So I hope that answered that question on Death's Opus. I know some people were asking about how insane it is, and they think it's like broken. It's okay. It has kind of bad attack speed, so it doesn't make your storm rain as insane as you would think, but it is a potential thing to work with. You can get into like probably yellows and early reds with that bow, no problem. And yeah, so now we're going to talk about the Lioneye's Vision. I highly recommend you guys rush for this when you can. Get this on a 5 link, because pretty much it gives your socketed gems supported by level 15 Pierce. So if it's on a 5 link, this is pretty much a 6 link. If it's on a 6 link, it's pretty much a 7 link. So crazy, but it's really good because it gives us decent amount of life. It gives us armor, which was actually kind of bad because we mitigate armor with our acrobatics. But what is important about this is that we don't have to put Pierce on anymore, so we could actually opt to use, I have this little one that's disabled currently, where you just use these links instead. These 5 links I'm currently using: elemental damage, lightning damage, inspiration, GMP, and lightning arrow. As a 6th link, you'll use increased damage with increased critical damage, and this will boost your DPS quite a bit. Now I'll keep this off just so we can act like a no, I'll keep them on, whatever, you can take them off. So those are your choices. So make sure you swap these. You can toggle it off and on. Use this as you need. You can swap whatever you need in the POB. It's for your discretion. But yeah, this is still leveling gear I would expect you to have for like early maps. This might be a little higher than you have, and that's perfectly fine. I'll go over the skill tree for a little bit. Skill tree is nothing too crazy. It's pretty much identical. I have leveling trees, so if you want to go through a new character, this is the order I recommend. It also does the order of what I recommend for your ascendancy, so keep that in mind. So there's the last ascendancy. So yeah, that's some recommendations I have for you guys. Now I'm going to go over commonly asked questions. So one thing is there's a big mana problem people always talk about, and that's pretty much game-wide mana problem. There's a few ways to fix this. The main way I chose to fix this is actually spec into Essence Sap. So you get leech from your arrows, and this actually does quite a bit. Now I need to take off some points here to make this all fit. You guys will have the finalized version, but Essence Sap, or even just taking just one mana leech, will help you out a ton. If you take a Lioneye's Fall Jewel, you actually get mana leech and life leech from Soul Raker, so you don't really need to spec into that anymore. The second option to help you with mana is have an enduring mana flask. This makes it so it does not expire when I'm at full mana, so I can still cast and it'll still be regenerating my mana. This is a really good option just to have it so when you're prepping for boss DPS, you can attack and then you could press it, and then you'll just never have to worry about it, because usual mana flask, when you hit cap, it'll just start sinking again because the flask will end. So making sure you have an enduring mana flask will be a big help to your mana problems. And the third way to fix your mana problems is just socketing in an inspiration support. Now inspiration is a really good way to get damage because it gives us elemental damage and crit chance per charge, and this is really strong, but it also reduces our mana cost. So without it on a 4-link, I'm costing 30. Well, my ring's actually pretty good, but I need my ring. So 33 mana. I put this on, it goes to 28 mana. That's actually quite a bit of difference because we have such a low mana threshold. So that's another way to fix it. The fourth way to fix it is to get non-channeling skills have minus mana cost. You can get this on your either ring. You can get this on an amulet, and this will help you out a lot as well. Any combination of these four methods is good. Just make it so it can be smooth gameplay. Using a Ballistica totem is actually really strong because you just place them down. You don't have to worry about casting them again for your mana wise. So then you can just focus on using Lightning Arrow, as before you would have to constantly cast Storm Rain and walk around with it, and it would use a lot of mana. So those are your options for fixing the mana problem. Another problem I had, well, many of you were asking about links on Storm Rain and not figuring out how to use it. I hope I already answered that for you guys. Another thing I wanted to talk about was the fact that this build is using 2 5-links, essentially 2 6-links. And a lot of people won't like that, and that's perfectly fine. You can just opt to do a gem swap instead. So if I have a Lioneye setup right here, I just swap for that. And now I'm using Storm Rain. All the links should be pretty much the same, so you're pretty good. You can just do a single gem swap for bossing and stuff, or you could opt for the 2 5-link / 6-link setup that I have, which is my preferred method because I don't have to worry about gem swapping ever. Late game for maximizing DPS, yes, having a gem swap is better because that gives you 6 additional sockets, and those sockets could be used for like vol gems or buffing up your other support gems somehow. And yeah, utilizing that would be a lot better. But I don't know, the smoothness of having 2 5-links right now on a bow is actually really good, and by the time we hit end game and we're super zoomy and super fast, I don't think it's going to be really that big of a problem. So that's what we have for the build so far. As for late game, there are some things I'm thinking about. Obviously getting some like plus extra projectiles would be really good. Getting damage everywhere you can would be really good. Getting tailwind boots, things like that, all end game stuff. But the cool thing I've been thinking about is potentially accuracy stacking with this build. Now, accuracy stacking is a thing I haven't done before in a build, but it does increase your damage by quite a bit, and it will cost a lot of currency, but that's something I can build towards endgame. You could obviously deck stack if you want, but that would be increasing your cold damage, so it's not as effective on this build. If you're looking into deck stacking a bow, don't use Lightning Arrow or Storm Rain. You're probably going to want to use something like Tornado Shot or Ice Shot or something like that that scales it a little bit better. So yeah, accuracy stacking might be the way to go. I'm gonna have to look into it a lot more, but I'm just trying to get done with the game. I'm sorry I came out with this video so late for you guys, but I've been a little bit busy, so that's how it's been. I hope you guys had a really good league start. I hope you're enjoying the build if you're playing it. Let me know if I didn't answer any of your questions. Leave it down below. I'll try to answer it to the best of my ability. If you guys are like really struggling or still don't understand the upgrade paths to go with, you guys can always send me your POB. I'm live on Twitch most days, so if you see me live on Twitch, you send me your POB. I'll take a look at it, and I'll see what you can upgrade and hopefully help you out. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the video. Thank you guys for checking me out. I hope to have a full-fledged build guide for this once I hit endgame, once I know how everything about this game feels, but I'm only in yellow maps, so this build is doing fine in yellows, and that's how it's going. So I hope you guys had a good league start, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. Later.